Council. Our first item on the agenda tonight is approval of the minutes, and we have 4 sets of minutes tonight. The minutes from April 27th, the closed session and the open session, the April 28th closed session, and the May 1st special meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes in block? Are there any comments or corrections? Ms. Fraga?
I will move to approve the minutes. I do not have any corrections myself.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Fraga, seconded by Ms. Niedergang. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the minutes pass in block, and next we come to announcements, and we will start with Council President Cohen.
I have one announcement, which is that the Master Plan Subcommittee meeting will be meeting on Monday, June 1st, for a final review of the green building and environmental sustainability element, which is hopefully going to be introduced at the Planning Board meeting on the 4th.
Terrific, thank you. Ms. Fraga, any announcements?
I do. I have one announcement. On Thursday, this coming Thursday, May 28th at 7 p.m., there's going to be a special meeting of the Princeton Human Services Commission, and it's being scheduled specifically to provide information regarding the COVID Emergency Relief Fund. We've received numerous questions about the process and the fund itself, and we hope that we'll be able to answer questions. Be a presentation by our Melissa Urias, our Human Services Director, and also Felicia Spitz of Princeton Children's Fund will be providing the information. It's more of a panel discussion, but we will also be taking questions from the public. It's a meeting that has been public notice, notifying the public that it's open to everyone, but also that because we know that there's members of council who are also maybe interested in the presentation. We have public noticed it as a meeting where members of council, a quorum of members of council may be present, but that there will be no action taken. So again, this is on Thursday, May 28th, 7 p.m. There's going to be information posted, if it hasn't been already, with the link to the Zoom meeting.
Councilwoman Fraga?
Yes.
I was told that it was 5 p.m. to 6:30.
I'm sorry. Where did I get 7 p.m.? I think it was changed, but that's 5 p.m. then. I may have been confusing it with another meeting. Sorry about that. So yes, sorry about that. So initially we had scheduled it for a different day, but because there were conflicts now, it will be Thursday, starting at 5. Thank you, Dolores.
You're welcome. And it
Okay,
has been noticed.
Great, thank you. Ms. Niedergang, any announcements?
I have no announcements tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and Mr. Williamson, any announcements?
I do, Your Honor. Just quickly from the Recreation Department and Recreation Commission, just want to mention what's going on over at Community Park. I'm trying to separate these into 3 different areas. We bifurcated between the camps and pools because aquatics are treated differently. And then I also mentioned tennis. On the summer camp side, right now the department is just considering all the different issues that have arisen because of the coronavirus pandemic. And just look out, because we're going to have a official announcement coming soon from the Recreation Department to answer any questions about what is going to happen with our summer camp program, or any alternatives to the program. So I don't want to make any announcements before that comes out officially from the Recreation Department. Regarding the community park pool, as I mentioned before, aquatics are treated a little differently. We're still waiting for guidance to come down from the governor's office as to what we can do with the pools, with the pool. I'm sorry. We expect we're thinking on June 13th, we would have some better guidance, but we think the extra 2 days given us up to June 15th will put us in a better position to know exactly how we can move forward, if at all, with the community park pool. The news with the tennis courts is a little better. We did reopen the tennis courts this past Saturday with some restrictions, and recreation, along with our community partners such as our police department, are monitoring to see if how well we can ease some of the restrictions in place. I would advise the public to just pay attention to the municipal website, which will have all the not just up to date, but up to the minute developments for all these different areas. That's it, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see, Ms. Sachs, any announcements?
No.
And Ms. Brown-Lambros, any announcements?
Yes, briefly, I wanted to announce that tomorrow will be the Economic Development Committee. Our Zoom call meeting will be at noon. So if you're interested in joining us, the details are on the website for dial-in. And we'll have, we're having an ongoing discussion about reopening strategies for the business community. And in addition, on Thursday, we'll have, again, the weekly business community Zoom call, which will be held at 10 a.m. on Thursday. And if you're not receiving those emails and are a business owner who'd like to, you can sign up for those on our website as well. And participate in this discussion where we are today. Stage 1 of reopening, non-essential retail has reopened, and we're talking about curbside waiting zones, and then what we're going to do in stage 2 as the restaurants and others get reopened. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I have a few announcements. The first is that the farmers market is going to be reopening for the season this Thursday. It's going to be in a different location to help with social distancing. And so it'll be at the Franklin, on the Franklin lot. And the hours are 10 to 2. And people can check the Princeton Farmers Market website. And I want to thank the police department and health department for helping to make that happen in a safe way. Also on this Friday morning, I'll be holding my monthly Meet the Mayor open office hours via Zoom. And you can find detailed information about how to log on to that either in the daily newsletter or on the website. And also just wanted to let folks know that Council has a special meeting planned for June 1st. That's next Monday. And one of the things that will be on the agenda is a ordinance introduction that is going to put a process in place that will help us in our flexibility and nimbleness in adjusting and adapting to some of the reopening orders that are coming down. Something that Councilwoman Brown-Lambros has been working on along with several other folks on council. So just will allow us to either do some things administratively that currently would take an ordinance change or allow council to vote on by vote resolution on some changes, again, that would normally be a much longer process. And this is during the extent of the emergency would give us that flexibility to meet the needs more quickly. And then finally, just a reminder, as much to myself as everybody else, recycling was not picked up on Monday because of Memorial Day, so it'll be picked up on Saturday. So we should all make note of that so you don't miss recycling day. And
Mayor, I have a question regarding your announcement about the farmers market, which is great news. In the past, the farmers market has accepted SNAP payments from those who receive that to use their card. And I was wondering if we know whether they will accept those SNAP debit payments there.
My understanding is that those will still be accepted.
Okay.
And because I did see a note about it on the Princeton Farmers Market website. They have a pretty a good, thorough website. So for people who want to know more about that, I would refer them to that website. And I don't know, Mr. Grosser, do you have more on?
Yeah,
SNAP
Mayor, I was just going to
benefits?
say they are accepting SNAP and debit payments for this farmers market.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then before I pass it on to if there's any staff announcements, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Grosser and also to Chief Sutter, who's been acting as head of the OEM during this period. Princeton reached a milestone today, which is a very happy milestone. So we went 3 days without any new positive test results coming back. And this was actually a second run of 3 days in a row with no positive test results in the past 10 days. So, I think that's a sign that things are slowing down. And I think the challenge is that we're now starting to reopen. Sort of the test results that we see are really a reflection of what was going on 2 weeks ago. So the challenge is, how do we keep that while we're starting to reopen and relax some of the restrictions? So, how do we keep up our practice of social distancing and being careful and being mindful? Because even though some of the policies are changing, the truth is that the disease hasn't changed. And so, we don't have a vaccine, we don't have treatments at this point, so we still have to be really careful. And have that balance of starting to reopen, but still staying safe. And Princeton's extremely lucky that we have such a fantastic health department. We have fantastic police department and first responders that are doing everything that they can. But this is a disease where it's like they can't do it by themselves. They're so reliant on just everybody acting in the right way as a community. Princeton's been doing a really great job, and we just need to keep it up. So with that, I'll pass it on and see if there's any staff announcements.
Mayor, I was just going to do a quick report. I just want to let everybody know the executive order for long-term care facilities to have all staff and residents tested is going to be completed by both Acorn Glen and Princeton Care Center by early tomorrow morning, which is a good thing. So we'll have a good idea as to, the infection rate in both facilities, and it'll kind of button up all of our concerns with regards to any other further outbreak exposure. So it's a big step forward from the executive order. Both facilities completed it very well, and we're moving ahead with their outbreak response plan to make sure that no further clusters occur.
Great, thank you. And I just had one last announcement I forgot to make. It's listed on the agenda here. We are going to be recessing the council meeting for 15 minutes starting at 7:40. This is a little unusual, but normally we meet on a Monday night. School board meets on a Tuesday night. School board is honoring a resident tonight, Stephanie Chorney. And so there's members of council who wanted to be able to be part of that honoring ceremony. So we're just going to take a brief break. With Zoom, it's really easy. We don't even have to run across the street. We just have to log off, log on, and then come back. So at 7:40, hopefully it'll be a good time for us to take a break. We're going to recess the meeting briefly, and then we'll be back. So before we move on to public comment, any other staff announcements?
No, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. And just a reminder of how we're doing public comment. If you are watching us on your computer, at the bottom of your screen, you can use the Q&A function to type in any sort of comment you'd like to make on any item that's not already on the agenda. If you are listening by phone, then you should email any comments you have to Princeton comments, that's all one word, Princeton comments @gmail.com, and there's somebody who is monitoring that email account. So I'm gonna give it a beat or two if anybody would like to submit a comment for something that's not already on the agenda. This is the time to do that. And I'm not seeing anything coming in on the Q&A. Is there anything coming in over the email?
There is not, Mayor.
Okay, then we will move on to reports. And the first report tonight is Chief Sutter is here to talk about some of the traffic issues we've been seeing and police response to that. So with that, I turn it over to the chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to brief everyone kind of on the picture that we're seeing as traffic starts to pick up in town, and not just in town, but around the state. I will say that over the last week and a half or so, I've been receiving many citizen complaints. I call them many, numerous citizen complaints about traffic related issues, specifically with bad driving habits, quite frankly. And I'm getting the same reports from our officers, and I'm seeing them myself. And we're seeing it in my conversations with my colleagues from around the county and state. We're all seeing this. I don't want to call it a phenomenon, but I think a byproduct of the reduction in traffic, in my opinion, on the roadways. There seems to have people have begun to take advantage of this, and we've seen some. We've actually observed some pretty egregious type of infractions, stuff that's dangerous, not just minor type of infractions. So with that being said, we knew that we were going to have to adjust our plans, if you will, as circumstances dictated, and we did have a plan for this. So we've been putting out some information on social media, but we are going to very proactively start to enforce as we were prior to the travel restrictions that were put in place, or advisories. We're going to start increasing our motor vehicle enforcement. And we know with this, there's a lot of still anxiety in our community. And we know with the increased interactions with, that we're going to have by stopping motor vehicles more frequently and having interaction with people, that, there's going to be some anxieties with that for a variety of reasons, in and above the normal police citizen interaction on such a stop. So I wanted to just start to put this information out and let our citizens know who have been contacting me, and maybe you as the governing body, and I know other officers in our department, that we're aware of it. We're going to be addressing this as we always have, and we're ready for it. One thing that we have to also note, that is, every action has a reaction. So right now, our court, for instance, is operating remotely, virtually. So as we begin to more proactively enforce, we know that that's going to have ramifications on the court right now. So I have been coordinating with the court. They're aware of where we're heading. There are systems in place, but the systems right now, obviously, virtually are not as smooth as they may normally be. So I just want to put all this out to the governing body, to the public, to let everybody know that we're being proactive now, coming out, enforcing, and that I just want everybody to be aware of that and know that we're trying to strike that balance again of being very sensitive to the all the issues created by the pandemic and all the anxieties, but we're really seeing what I consider a public safety hazard. I mean, some of the driving that we're seeing is just something that we're really not used to, and it has to be addressed. So we'll be taking the appropriate action, and hopefully I'll be communicating with you and the public and reacting to what we're learning.
Thanks, Chief. We'll start with Ms. Fraga and then Ms. Niedergang.
Thank you, Chief. I was wondering if you're aware for individuals who would have to present themselves even virtually for court if there's a violation. For those who may not have computer access, do you know how that would be handled?
I don't. I can get an answer for you very easily. So the system was just kind of put in place over the last 2 weeks. It came down from the, I guess, mandated from the Administrative Office of the Courts statewide. It's gone very well so far in Princeton, and I know that they'll have processes by which we'll address that, and I'll get you an answer and get back.
Chief Sutter,
If I could, we talked about this a little bit before in talking to the court.
Okay.
They're also doing plea by mail, allowing people to plea by mail. So there are some alternatives that they're using in the court, and it's going to be part of a learning process. But the chief is right. It's just, it's a new thing. One of the things he's going to deal with is collecting additional information we didn't normally collect, like email addresses.
Okay.
And let me add to that, Councilwoman Fraga, is that some prosecutors are also calling pro se clients, clients not represented by attorneys, over the phone and trying to work things out over the phone. And then we would add what Mark is talking about in regards to people will then send in a plea by mail.
Okay.
And along with, if there's a fine payment, they'll also send in a check written out to the appropriate parties.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Ms. Niedergang?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Sutter, thank you for that. I have a follow-up question about that, and then a question unrelated to traffic. So when you talk about the traffic incidents you're seeing, is it primarily speeding or speeding plus other types of reckless behavior?
Yes. So primarily, definitely speeding is an issue, but we're seeing some other types of violations, red light violations, stop sign violations, things that and this just goes on my experience and from what an assumption. When there's more traffic volume, especially during the day, some of these violations are less available, if you will, just by volume. But in some of the intersections that we're getting reports on and also observing, it's not normal type of behavior that we experience, especially during the day. So I've attributed directly to volume, but it's becoming, I hope it's not becoming like a habit or a course of business for some because the volume.
Right.
But as we're repopulating the streets with pedestrians and people exercising and bicyclists, it's a recipe that we don't want to think we need to stop.
Okay, thank you. And the unrelated question, and I'm saying I'm getting 2 to 3 calls or emails about this a day. I know that Governor Murphy increased the size of gatherings from 10 to 25 people. And I know the people who've been bringing gatherings to my attention are not intending to spy on or oppress people. It really comes from a place of concern. But I've just had numerous, and I don't know if my fellow council members have also experienced this, but I have, people calling or texting or emailing me saying, giving me an address and saying, there's 18, people in the driveway and they're 2 inches apart and nobody is wearing a mask. And I really don't know what to do and what to tell people to do. I know one person called over the weekend and was told that, the governor had increased the number of people, but that was only one of the issues. The other issue is that, people were very close and they weren't wearing masks. I know you're not required to wear a mask outside. So I think I would, and maybe the rest of council would appreciate some guidance on what we should do and what we should advise other residents to do.
Absolutely. It's oddly enough, and I expected more calls than I've seen that we've gotten on this, but it's a situation we have encountered. So I guess when there's a concern like that, it's we would definitely, I'd like to say we respond in the times that we have had to respond I keep saying in an educational way, in that you could call the police department, an officer would go and make an observation first to see if there's any, per se violations of the executive orders on first observation. And then the officer would just talk to the homeowner and try to, or resident, and try to educate the person on what the executive order is and give advice. And in the times that we've responded so far, it's been pleasant. I've gotten complaints on we've had a couple interactions where I've gotten on the same interaction, a compliment and a complaint, where somebody was very thankful that the officer handled it well and kind of gave some education, and then someone else was upset that we were kind of taking an authoritarian type of approach to it. So that's going to happen, right? We have to accept that, but I think in the interest of safety, it can't hurt to call us. We'll go and we'll take a look. And if there's intervention needed, we'll do so in the most minimal fashion and from an education perspective. I really do think, maybe not so much now, but definitely several weeks ago, there was some lack of awareness. People just didn't know the absolute specifics of the executive orders. And I still would hope when we do have violations that that's probably the case. And I think that is the best approach. You can give us a call and we'll proceed that way. Certainly that's our job and we'll do so. Don't be fearful that we'll go in there and break it up if it doesn't have to be that way, but if it has to be, we would do that as well. I don't know if that answers your question or helps, but I think that's the best advice I could give.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that guidance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a related question, if I may, Mayor. I'm sorry, Mayor. Just a quick question. I know Princetonians tend to be more congenial than the average, or much more pleasant than the average. But I'm seeing the news reports around the country about some folks being really upset when storefronts are asking them to cover their faces or wear face masks, et cetera, coming in. Just wondering if we're getting any issues with that. Some people have got to physical fights and et cetera. I'm just wondering if we've had any of that issue in Princeton.
No, quite to the contrary. If we get the majority of our complaints would be that people are wishing more people are masked when in public. Mm-hmm. We haven't had any issues in stores where there's been any confrontations or fights or anything like that. So it's been, I have to say, it's been every time we've responded and there's been any type of issue, it's been a very pleasant type of interaction, and the person has taken our advice and adhered to what we told them. And that's really been in our times we've experienced that it's been more of a misunderstanding of what the executive order was and a purposeful act to go against it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Ms. Perrin-Lambros?
Thanks, Chief. Thanks for all the hard work you and the force are doing. We really appreciate it. And just to follow on with this same line, I think when we spoke a few weeks back, the force was also had some availability of masks. So if someone didn't have a mask or there was a complaint, they were handing them out. Do you still have that ability to do that? And do you still have supply? How's that?
We worked very hard, and I have to say, I do have to mention this, the public coming out and donating to us, members of the public, has just been so helpful and so overwhelming. We are just so lucky. I've been so thankful that we early on were able to aggressively acquire PPE, especially masks. Every one of our officers has a supply in their vehicle and can supply a mask to anybody in need at any time. So we are in good shape there. We've had maybe a handful of times that we've actually had to do that. There's been really no other interactions where it's been required, but we do have them and are ready to use them. We've been sharing them with different members of our community that need them for their groups or employees as well.
And I should also mention that both the Health Department and the Arts Council has made them available to those who are distributing meals, whether through the mobile food pantry or others, so that they can then hand out to our members of our community who may need one.
Thank you. Wonderful initiative. Thank you, Chief. Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the Chief? Okay, well, I just want to reiterate everybody's thanks for your hard work, Chief Sutter, and for everyone in the department. We're really grateful for just your excellent service during this time. And, I think especially when there's difficult times like this, it just makes you even more thankful that we have such a great police department under your leadership. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And it's absolutely our pleasure and honor to serve, especially in times like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it's almost time for council reports, but given the time, I'm going to suggest we take the recess now, and because it's close to 7:40, and we will reconvene here on this channel at 7:55. So 5 of the hour. We'll be back. Anybody who would like to join us over, who's watching over on the school board channel, you're welcome to do that. I think if you're not part of the delegation from the council that's going over to the school board meeting, then you should not go over there because we haven't noticed it as the council being over there. But we are going to convey everybody on council's good wishes. Oops, that was my alarm, just in case I forgot. Yeah, Ms. Fraga?
Clarify, if we received an invitation with the link, did we have to notify Dolores or how?
I don't know. Trishka, do you want to? Is it all right if we're giving out a?
There are 3 people who are supposed to be part of the webinar, who is David, Liz, and myself. And if it was going to be more officially part of the webinar, then I think it had to be noticed. But everyone can watch it on YouTube.
Correct.
Okay.
Or just
Great.
yeah.
All right. So
Yes.
you're welcome. Everybody's welcome over there then. And after you see us present, we can come back to this meeting, but we won't start up again until 5 of 8, just in case people aren't going over to the school meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, Ms. Prone-Lambros?
Sorry, technically, do we keep the link open and turn off our video, or do we get off and come back on?
I'm
Gonna
going
remain
to
on.
leave because I think I can only do one Zoom at a time.
I will remain on, and anyone else can go up, but they will be open, and I will remain on.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'll just.
Okay.
All right.
Do we need to vote to go into recess, or do I just say, we haven't gone into recess very often, or do we just go into
I think
recess?
it's, unless you hear violent objections, I think just go ahead and do it by
Okay.
fiat.
Okay, all right. So this meeting will go into recess and we'll resume at 7:55. So I think we're just waiting for a couple more people and then we can resume the meeting. All right, I think we're all set. So I'd like to call this meeting back to order. I want to thank everybody. So I'm getting weird feedback. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Okay, I'm going to try again without the feedback. So I want to thank everybody for their patience for that brief recess. We're going to pick up where we left off, which was reports. And I'd like to start with Council President Cohen to see if you have any reports for this evening.
I think David's having trouble. Oh, there it is.
Sorry about that. I pulled up my reports and couldn't see that I was muted.
I think David's having trouble. Oh, there it is.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep, you sound good.
All right. So first, I wanted to report on the work that the Bicycle Advisory Committee has been doing. We've continued to be working on the alternatives for rebalancing our street. Committee has been doing. We've continued. I'm getting an echo now. Working on the alternatives for rebalancing our street. Committee has been doing. We've continued.
Yeah, there's something, this happened to me too. There's something
on the
messed up with the recording here.
It's been doing, we've continued.
Yeah, there's something, this happened to me too. There's something.
Everyone needs to mute. Michelle, you're not muted.
It's been doing.
I don't think that makes a difference.
Happened to me too.
Yeah.
Everyone mute though.
Is it worth it to go out and come back?
I was
I
muted.
don't think that
but
makes a
it's not-
difference.
It's not making a difference.
See, my echo said it twice. I wonder if it's worth going out and coming back in.
Dwayne, if you could mute, it seems to be helping that other people muted.
There's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to look for it.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Okay. So I'm going to try and do this by memory because pulling up my notes seems to be causing things to go haywire a little bit too. But I wanted to report that the Bicycle Advisory Committee has been continuing to work on the project of trying to rebalance our streets so that the increased numbers of bicyclists and pedestrians have the space that they need to be able to socially distance from each other. And the reduced number of automobiles luckily helps to make that possible. So one of the initiatives is to actually introduce some quiet streets or slow streets around town, which will actually be closed to through traffic. We'll be putting out barricades with signage explaining what those are about. And I can share with council offline the streets that have actually been proposed for that. There are about 8 or 10 of them around town. The bicycle boulevards, which are designated in the bicycle mobility plan that was adopted several years ago as part of the master plan, all of the signage for those bicycle boulevards has been ordered by the engineering department, and they will look for them to be installed within the next couple of weeks. So those are both really nice aspects of what we're trying to do that are affecting mostly residential neighborhoods. And then we've also been working with Michelle and hopefully a subcommittee of merchants from the community to talk about the more challenging problem of rebalancing the streets in the commercial districts, where we, on top of the needs of pedestrians and bicyclists, you also have the needs for curbside pickup for the businesses as they reopen, possibly sidewalk widening to allow for queuing outside of stores that are open for takeout. And finally, we hope there will be some actual street closures to allow either street closures or repurposing of public areas so that restaurants can actually serve outdoor meals to help sustain their business as they reopen, and once the governor allows that to happen. Just briefly, the stormwater, flood and stormwater committee, last time we met, I mentioned that there was a subcommittee formed to look specifically at legislative initiatives. That committee met on Friday, had a super productive meeting where we got through, essentially, we agreed that we were going to use the model ordinance that was promulgated by the state, but adapt it so that special features of Princeton stormwater regulations would be incorporated into it. We got through that entire draft of the consolidated ordinance. I mean, it's not buttoned up yet, but got a bunch of comments. We also reviewed the proposals for improving our minor project regulations, which currently haven't been functioning as well as we would hope, because there's some testing of soils and other kinds of investigations that need to happen before you can install a system and know that it's actually going to do what you want it to do. So we got through the proposed revisions to that as well. And the only thing that we have left to go through is the redevelopment ordinance, which I guess we'll do at the next meeting of that subcommittee. I think that's enough for now. I had a couple of other very brief reports, but I think those are the key ones that I wanted to give.
Great, thank you. Ms. Fraga?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My report is more of an update and regarding the census. At a previous meeting, I had reported that Princeton at one time was #1 in the state as far as our participation rate, and then that we had been surpassed by Lawrenceville. But Councilman Williamson and I also serves on the Complete Census, Complete Count Committee for Princeton. And we've been in communications with our regional representative. And it appears that there might have been some members or in the residents who were not have been counted yet. Already we had heard from Kristen Applegate from the university, who also serves on the Complete Count Committee, that they were actually having a really great response rate from students and faculty. But apparently those numbers were not yet included in what the region was counting, because there were some questions regarding building numbers and other information that had not been clarified yet. But now that we put the two in touch with each other, hopefully that will be clarified, and hopefully that will mean our numbers will go back up again. But just in case, again, encouraging everyone that if they haven't yet participated in the census, to please do so. It really is important, not just to be counted, but what it means to us as a community and the funds that we're eligible for. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Williamson?
No additional reports aside from what I said in the earlier in the announcements.
Great.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And Ms. Niedergang?
I just have one update in case those who are not aware of it. At our last meeting, we passed a resolution urging the state of New Jersey to decide against supporting the Northeast compressor pipeline known as NESE, N-E-S-E, not Nessie as in Loch Ness. And both New York and New Jersey have now decided not to approve those applications. It may not be dead, but it's definitely crippled. So the company would have to kind of reconsider whether they want to go ahead at this point. So it's a very good for us, especially since the compressor station was going in Franklin. And it's very good for the environment in New Jersey and for the bay and the river in which this pipeline would have gone across. So I just wanted to share that really good piece of news.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sachs?
Just the an update on the IT situation, that the IT committee is going to be meeting the first week in June and hopefully addressing some of the ongoing connectivity issues. Special thanks to Terrence from the IT department, who's really worked hard in the past week to deal with some of the issues. And I think we're gonna be finally getting a handle at that meeting on what our staff needs to have maximum productivity working from home. So that's my update.
Great, thanks. And finally, Ms. Pearl-Lambros?
Just briefly, just to follow on that Council President Cohen mentioned as well, that we're working together with the business community to formulate a strategy. I mentioned before about we're in stage 1 right now of reopening, and we're looking at designating curbside waiting zones, and that will come before council next Monday. And then in addition to that, looking at stage 2, which we need to be ready for, could happen at any moment when we can have our restaurants reopen, especially if we keep having really good reports on the safety of opening these back up. And we need to look at public spaces, sidewalks, parklets, looking at really all the ideas that are out there of where we can expand outdoor seating and also have safe queuing for retailers. And so we're working together with the business community in formulating that strategy. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And the only report I had for tonight was something that made news, I think, about a week ago. One of the governor's executive orders was that the July 7th primary is going to be virtually all vote by mail. So if you are a registered voter, you will be receiving a vote by mail ballot, even if you did not request one.
I think, Liz, I'm sorry, Mayor, I just need to interrupt. My understanding is that if you were, since this is a primary election, if you are a registered Democrat or Republican, you will be automatically be receiving a ballot. If you are not a registered with a party that has a primary, you will be receiving a request to apply for a ballot.
That's right.
I'm
yes.
90%
Thank you for that.
accurate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. And in addition to that, even though everybody who's able to is being encouraged to vote by mail, there will be at least one in-person polling station for people who need to vote provisionally for any reason, or for people who have some sort of condition that makes it difficult for them to vote by mail. So the clerk's office has been working hard to identify a good spot for this in town, and I think we'll be working with the county in order to announce where that will be. But the intention is for a large majority of residents to use the vote by mail option to keep themselves safe and to keep our polling workers safe as well. Are there any staff reports? Excuse me. Ms. Doctor?
I have a couple, Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
The Turning Basin Canoe Concession opened this weekend in accordance with Executive Order 146. Construction activities are also picking up. We anticipate that our municipal contractor may resume work next week on Mount Lucas Road. We also have some side path work on Alexander Street that's under the same contract that will resume as well. The contractor anticipates completing all of this work in about 3 weeks. So hopefully by the end of June, all of the work associated with the Mount Lucas Road project and Alexander Street will be completed. We also have PSE&G working in town on their 2019 gas modernization program. They completed the work over on Rosedale Road and have shifted to Springdale Road. They will also be resuming with their paving activities, possibly as early as next week. The paving activities will be overnight paving on Princeton Kingston Road, and then switching over to daytime paving on Dodds Lane, Levitt Lane, and Southern Way. PSE&G has also updated us that they have a new list for 2020 of gas mains that require replacement. So we will be working with them to get more information on that and provide it to the public. But it looks like a lot of the work is focused in the Riverside neighborhood. So like I said, as we get more details, we'll pass that on. That's my update.
Great, thank you. Are there any other staff reports?
No, Mayor.
Mr. Cohen?
I just wanted to mention one of the other things that I forgot is that we've received a request from the Friends of Harrington Woods for a support letter from council for this historic grant, funding grant for the Babblin House restoration. This is actually, or a related item is on our agenda for tonight. But I wanted to mention it because I'm going to be seeking to put that onto the agenda for the June 1st meeting as well, waiting for a draft from Clifford Zink, the historic consultant who's working with them on the project. So,
Okay, thank you. And Mr. DeShield, did you have a report?
I do not, Mayor.
No, okay. All right, so I think we can move on then to the ordinance public hearing for tonight, which is Ordinance 2020-13, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regarding illicit connections and spilling dumping of materials to Princeton's stormwater sewer system, the feeding of wildlife in Princeton's parks and on other municipally owned properties, the removal of pet waste, littering, and the collection of grass clippings, and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. And Ms. Stockton, can you just remind the public who's attending the changes that are in this ordinance?
Sure, Mayor. This is a housekeeping ordinance to better reflect the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's model ordinances for these various topics, including pet waste, illicit connections, garbage and litter control. So it's mainly taking information that's in DEP's model ordinance and making sure that it is also part of our ordinances.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions on this ordinance from council before we open up the public hearing? Mr. Cohen?
Don't we need to move to introduce before the public hearing, or?
It's already been introduced at the prior meeting.
Oh, sorry.
So are there any questions regarding the ordinance itself? Okay, so with that, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And just to remind everybody who's tuning into this meeting, there are two ways to comment as part of the public hearing. One is if you're watching this over a computer, to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to enter a comment. The other, if you're dialing in by phone, is to send an email with your comment to princetoncomments@gmail.com. So I'll wait a beat to see if anybody has any testimony for the public hearing on this ordinance. I'm not seeing anything on the Q&A. Is there any emails coming in?
No, Mayor, there's no emails and emails.
No emails. Okay. All right. So I'd like to close the public hearing for this ordinance and bring it back to council. If there's no further discussion, is there a motion to approve?
I'll
So
move.
move.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Ms. Fraga, seconded by Ms. Niedergang, and Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Dolores, you're muted.
Yeah, but I think Ms. Williams muted herself by
Okay.
accident.
all right, let's do it again. Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. And next we come to resolutions. We have two resolutions on the agenda for tonight. The first one is 2181 resolution to authorize and execute a pledge agreement with the 10 Acre Foundation in the sum amount of $500,000 annually for the years 2020 to 2024. And I'd like to thank the 10 Acre Foundation for their support of municipal functions. This is much appreciated, and we appreciate your partnership as well. So with that, is there a motion to approve?
I'd like to just comment first that the 10 Acre Foundation actually owns 70 acres. So I just thought, I was like, oh, 10 acres, but they own 70. It used to be 10. Sorry.
Sevenfold.
And I would love to make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Niedergang, seconded by Ms. Sachs. Any other further comment or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 2182, resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign owner's assurances form on behalf of Princeton in connection with a grant application for the Babblin House. This is something that Mr. Cohen referenced earlier in the meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Ms. Sachs. Any comments or questions on this resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously, and then now we come to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature passed by a single vote. Are there any items on the consent agenda anybody would like removed?
Mayor, I did have one. I don't know if I need to have it removed, but I did have one question for Ms. Stockton, if that's possible, or should we?
I think
so
think-
that would be resolution 10-186.
2186.
20. One.
Okay, so
Oh,
I think
I'm sorry, 20. Thank you.
yeah, I think we're actually supposed to have it removed from the consent agenda so it can be discussed.
Oh.
So why don't we take that one up first? So resolution 2186, resolution authorizing a cost sharing agreement in the not to exceed amount of $14,905 with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for a traffic signal modification at US Route 206 and Edgerstone Road. So why don't we make the motion first, and then we can have the discussion. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohen. Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Fraga. And Ms. Niedergang, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so when I read this over, it goes back to 1979. And according to how I read the 1979 agreement, it said that this, I mean, it's not a large amount of money, but I'm just curious how this works, because according to my reading of the 1979 agreement, the state agreed to take on all costs if the signal had to be moved or refurbished or whatever. And so I'm just wondering why in the wake of that agreement, we are expected to carry some of the costs for that. So
The current policy with DOT typically is that we do a cost sharing with them on any traffic signal improvements that are generated by the municipality. And so in this case, I think it was back in 2017, we sent in a problem statement to DOT regarding the traffic signal at 206 and Edgerstone. And so they completed their study of the intersection and how the signal operated and came back to us to ask for that 25%. It's typical, that's what we pay. We paid for 25% of the signal at Nassau and Washington. And if they do anything at Witherspoon and Nassau, I'm sure we will also be paying 25% towards that.
Is that just that the policy has changed since 1979? And so even though we have this agreement, because in other cases, there hadn't been something that explicitly said the state will, that I saw, that the state will cover all of the costs. So it's just a change in policy and, okay. All right, thank you for that.
State has bigger pension issues now than did in 79. So they're not as generous.
All right,
My take
are
on
there
it.
any further questions on this resolution? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. And we should also mention that the Hun School is helping with these costs as well. And we're appreciative of their partnership on this project. So now we'll go back to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Niedergang. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Fraga. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. And now is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll
All
give
right,
it to
I'm gonna-
David.
Okay, moved by Mr. Cohen and seconded by Ms. Niedergang. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. And just a
Thank you,
reminder
everyone.
that our next meeting is on June 1st. Okay, bye.